learning and other stuff.
Great. Yes, I may ask you to connect with Susie Tanchel, who is a longtime Boston person who's now on faculty at Hebrew College, and she's doing some investigation into Shalom learning. So I may ask you to connect with her.
Sure, no problem.
Okay.
No problem.
Hello, Kayla. Welcome. Kayla, I'm just looking for my pen.
Oh, that's okay. How are you doing?
Good, good, good. Good morning. So do Kayla and Beth, I want to introduce you to our colleague, Miriam Hellerstern. Do either of you met her before?
Nope. Good morning.
Oh, nice to meet you.
So we're thrilled
Nice
that
to meet
Miriam's with us. What time? We still have a few more minutes. So Miriam, would you like to hear where Beth and Kayla each are?
Sure. Well, I figure we'll do that when everybody gets here. I've got a little quick get to know each other built in. So
Yeah. Okay. Well, depending on how big the group is, we may not be able to do a full go around. So, but we'll ask people to put their schools or whatever in the chat, in the their names.
Sure.
Beth and Kayla, if you have some colored paper around, that will be helpful for you.
Forgot about that. I'll be right back.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm gonna go get some too. I'll be back.
Great. Yeah, it's hard to know if we're going to get a good group today or not. I think, people are pretty much done with, their schools at this point, but some people may already be on vacation. I think Robin is joining us now. Let's see.
Hi, good morning.
Hi, yes, it is Robin. Good morning. Good to see you.
See you. I'm gonna have to leave about 11:45.
Okay, thanks. Isn't Monday your day off? Isn't that why you?
It is, but I don't know. This just looked really good, and school's over, and
Awesome.
Yeah, I wanted to see.
Awesome. I'm so glad. So while you're, you want to see, but we want you to participate. So if you have 2 pieces of colored paper.
I do. I read your email.
I love it when people follow instructions. Good morning, Allison.
hi, Allison.
Allison knows Miriam, right? You did your master's.
Some of this material too.
Great. I will wait another minute or 2.
I think Bailey's planning on coming.
Good. Yeah, I said it was hard to know, like, would people come today, or people on vacation, or people feeling like you did, like, I'm done with school, I might as well come. It sounds great. So we'll see. And Michael, I don't know if any of our current graduating students feel like ready to sort of jump in on something fun like this, or if they're still too stressed.
We told everyone, encouraged them, and of course their finals have come in, and they're working on presentations for presentation day. If anybody wants to see our graduates do their thing, presentation day, June the 3rd, all day long. We have about 20, 25 presentations, I think, that day with different groups.
Yeah, it's exciting.
When
Beth, remember that day?
Yes, I do. Very well.
Yeah, and Robin, Brandeis graduation was just yesterday. So,
but I don't think they did it. I think it was just all work.
We did for the education program. It was totally everyone, the graduates and the faculty were live, but the speeches and everything were pre-recorded. But then we did like a little reception afterwards that was very live.
Oh, but the students walked, had an in-person graduation ceremony.
I don't know exactly, like none of the teacher leader people did, because they were all remote anyway. I don't know what the undergrads did. I think
I'm pretty sure that theirs was all virtual, and they invited them, last year's class, to come back for their 5-year reunion and have a graduation.
Well, and I thought I saw something where they were allowing people, like there was like a couple of hours where they could convene in one of the big halls and get their photograph taken with the president and stuff like that. Oh, and I see Jamie. So yes, an alum, a new alum popping in. Okay, and we'll get started as soon as Jamie comes on. Jamie, you with us? Yes, there you are.
Yes.
Mazel tov to a newly minted rabbi.
Almost, June
Yes.
6th.
Yeah, I know the date well. All right, so I think we'll get started. Lovely to see everybody. Good that everyone is here. So this is actually our last session of this academic year in this series of For Our Teachers. Thank you to many of you for participating in many of these sessions that we started in April of 2020 as the world shut down. We created this environment, this venue where we could come together to find solace and inspiration and be together and think about what's best for us, for our teachers and for our students, and which is why we called the series For Our Teachers and Our Students. Today, we're really privileged to have Dr. Miriam Heller-Stern, our colleague from HUC in LA, but I believe her title and her responsibilities expand beyond the LA campus. So we're thrilled to have Miriam with us. Many of you may know Miriam from other interactions you may have had. We're going to be speaking today about embracing creative thinking. And here's our agenda. So I'll do a brief intro in a minute. Michael's then going to share a kavanah. If you have 2 pieces of colored paper close by, that'll be helpful for Michael's presentation. And then Miriam's going to really do a deep dive with us on embracing creative thinking, and then we'll wrap up. I'm going to stop. Oh no, I want to share. This was my a quote from Albert Einstein: "Creativity is intelligence having fun." And I think many of us can identify with that or push back on that a bit. I do want to share as well, though, from our tradition of where creativity and intelligence might interact or do interact, and that will be my Hineni moment for this morning. So if everyone wants to just take a deep breath in and a deep breath out, and think about both from Albert Einstein and from our tradition, the image of Bezalel and Oholiav, our 2 creators from the text, from the original Tanakh, from Shmot. And what I found so interesting about the 2 people that we are told as being imbued with God's spirit and wisdom and creativity is Bezalel is from the tribe of Judah, the real princely tribe, and Oholiav is from the tribe of Dan, a much more lower class tribe, and one that often is not associated with intelligence and richness and intellectual capacity. And the Midrash goes on to tell us that the reason why the 2 are images is because the whole community can be involved in creativity. And it's not just the princely class that can be involved in creativity. So I want us to think for our kavanah going into today's session. And I don't know how all of you interact or feel about this, but I'm sure we all know students who the minute we say take out 2 pieces of colored paper, they start in with, oh, I'm not creative, I can't draw a straight line, I can't do this. But let's channel both sides, all sides of our creative capacities, and to understand that our Tanakh gives us the guidepost to include all sides of creativity. With that, I'm going to turn it to Michael.
Morning, everyone. Lovely to see you all. First of all, a thank you to Marianne for putting on this series over the entire year. What a great experience we've had in sharing some wonderful teachers and learning together, and most importantly, to check in with each other And I think thank you to Beth for being the stalwart of the group, being with us every time. And it's wonderful to connect with former students and to have the opportunity to be together as educators throughout the whole year. This is just a kavanah to get us thinking and experiencing and preparing for the whole act of creativity that my colleague Miriam Hellerstern will lead us on. And it's a real privilege and an opportunity to study from one of the most wonderful educators in our Jewish educational world. Miriam stands out really, certainly in my estimation, as a teacher and a colleague for all of us. So I don't want to take too much time away from Miriam, and I want to make it as short as possible, but I do want us to just prepare for the whole issue of what it means to be a creative being. Of course, the largest gift that we have of creativity is, of course, the very act of creation itself, God's creation of the world. And we all wonder at that wonder of creativity and creation that we have. For many of you will know that Torah Godly Play is a method by which we bring our sense of the world to our students. And here you will see, and I hope everyone can see that, here you'll see the story we use for the story of creation itself, Bereshit. And you have from the left to the right the 7 days of creation. And the act of creativity that is being offered to us as those who live within this world of creation is a gift. It's the largest gift we have. And it starts with the gift of light separated from darkness, all of the light that has always been and always will. And then we have the gift of water, the waters that are surrounding and underneath us, and the waters that are above us, and the space that is between those waters. Then we have the gift of everything that is green and growing, and the gift that separates that land, Haaretz, from Hayam, the seas. And then we have the gift of all that is above us in the sky, the sun and planets, the moon and stars, and the separation of days between them and nights, the ways in which we can tell time of months and years and eons and ages. And then we have on the fifth day, all the creatures that are flying in the sky and all the creatures that are swimming in the waters, all of the creatures, wherever they are and however they move. And then on the wonderful sixth day, Tov Ma'od, it was really, really good day. We have all the creatures who were created as a gift that have many legs. And then finally, all the creatures that have 2 legs and walk upon the haaretz, walk upon the land. And that's us. And that was a wonderful fulfillment and culmination of these gifts, these 6 gifts of creativity that were given to us. And of course, as we know, on that last day, God rested. And we have a day to reflect on all the gifts we got on the other 6 days, a time to look back and think about that wonderful nature of gift giving. So I wanted to ask you, what are the patterns? What do you notice about this gift of creativity? What are the patterns that you see? What's standing out for you? Can you just unmute and say out loud what you see, what you notice, what draws your attention in this visual depiction of these 7 days of creation?
This is not so much a noticing, but more of a curiosity. I guess it is a noticing. I noticed when you described in day 2 the waters below and the waters above, and you said and what's in between, and that is like really. I am thinking about that a lot. I have to say, like, I've not thought about that before. So.
Right. Absolutely. We call it the rakia, the firmament, but what does that mean? And
right.
we know in the story of Noah, the waters, when the flood comes, the waters come from above, but they also come from below. And yes, it's a really, I wonder about that too. What is it that separates those waters and creates this? It's a little like that Simpson, and it's like the space in between that we're allowed to exist in. Any other noticing patterns, thoughts, reflections?
Well, I noticed that it's very simple, and as soon as you put it up, I knew it was creation, but any one of those by itself, I might not known. Like in my mind, I filled in the details of like the people, the animals, the fish. Like I picture the fish with an eye and gills, right? They're called, fish have gills. Almost like maybe the white space of the Torah, like the letters are there, but I filled in my own meaning for what actually is depicted.
Beautiful. That's wonderful.
So I noticed a progression, maybe not 100%, but as the days went on, there's a more of a, how do I put this? Each day, the creations are more able to move on their own free will. So humans are the highest level of that. Creature and fish and birds sometimes can move on their own free will and sometimes not. Sometimes they just are forced to by, I don't know, nature. They have to fly or they have to move. And then before that, there are, I don't know, it's just a progression to me on the abilities of the creations.
So that's lovely. Thank you, Rabbi Jamie. So the notion of progression and working towards something that may become enriched as life continues and life moves forward. I have to say, in 2019, I went to Nova Scotia and I saw the ancient sea creatures that are fossilized and have been thrown up from the seabed onto the land in fossil stone, and they're supposed to be the oldest form of life, and yet there is evidence that they moved across the seabed, or waved across the seabed. We're not quite sure, but certainly that goes to the heart of what you're suggesting. Any other notices or patterns that you see, particularly in this visual depiction?
I was just also going to comment on the fact that there are only 6 colors used, which is really remarkable for the level of meaning and detail that they convey. 7 slides, 6 colors, and it just tells so much with such simplicity.
I was actually going to say a similar thing, Bailey, that I noticed a lot of the use of blue, and it was making me think of, as you were saying, like the simplicity of the beginning of the world. If I imagine like maybe there were only 1 or 2 colors in the beginning of the world, and thinking about that the story that's going to come after this is going to be Noah and the rainbow, that like as the world is developing, it's getting more colorful and more vibrant with different lives and relationships and animals and plants and everything.
That's amazing. Thank you. That's beautiful. So thank you for all that noticing. One thing I also notice is this notion of separation that seems to be common amongst many of the gifts of creation, the separation of the waters, the separation of day and night, separation of light and dark, things that are above the sky, things that are below the waters, separation of animals, creatures, and human beings. And then, of course, Shabbat comes to us as a kind of a unification. It's a bringing together of everything into one. And that pattern was also something that strikes me as I look at these depictions. So what I would like you to do is take two pieces of colored paper. I'd like you to identify one as one of the aspects that you've noticed, and the other one as another aspect. So this might be a color, this might be a separation between water and land, this might be something that you've identified, that you've noticed, that has a sense of one color representing one thing and one color representing another thing. And the way I would like you to tear the paper in paper midrash style, and I'd like you to create a visual image of these two things connected together, these two torn papers that would bring together, as we have it, say, in Shabbat, a sense of the unification from the separation. What is it that is identified in these creative acts that we have all around us, and what is the means by which some of these things can come together? How could you think about that being unified as you put these two colors together? When you've done that, and you're just tearing paper and you're thinking of a way to put them together, when you've done that, if you want to, you can post them up into Padlet, and I'll put the Padlet link in the chat, and then that will give you an opportunity to annotate, if you want as well, your own thing. I'm going to give you 2 minutes to do that.
Can you explain again?
Sure. So I'm asking you to pick one item and identify the color that you want to have it represented, and then pick a second item that you've noticed and have it represented by a second color, and then show ways in which they interconnect, show ways that they connect together and become part of a whole, part of a unification.
I want to add one other prompt before you put it in Padlet. Hold up your creation and we'll take a screenshot before everyone takes a photo and puts it in Padlet, okay?
Great. I'm going to give you 2 minutes and we're going to start the clock now.
And Michael, did you put the link to the Padlet in yet?
Not yet.
Okay.
Okay, I hope that was enough time to do the exercise. And if you, as Miriam suggested, let's just hold up what we have, and Miriam can take a screenshot. Wow, amazing.
Okay, hold on.
Super. We've got our thank you, and if you want to post it into Padlet and do an annotation, then we'll get a sense of what you were working on. And we don't have time for everyone to share, but I want to remind us all that the gift of creativity is such a wonderful opportunity for us, as Jamie said, to progress into the world, to use our imaginations, and to become spiritual beings, which if we are destined to be anything, I hope it's that. And I hope that this was just a way, Kavanagh, to get ready for the work that we're now about to do. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Michael, and thank you everybody for your participation. I'm really going to turn it to Miriam, and the stage, the screen is hers to take us deeper into this world of creativity.
Everyone, good morning. Well, it's still morning for you. It's early here in Los Angeles, and it's so lovely to be with you today. I want to thank Marian and Michael for inviting me to teach and learn with you a bit. So we've been playing with the idea of creation and the source of creation. And of course, one of the ways that we are created in the image of God is that we take the creation story and work it into our own lives. So today we're going to have a chance to explore why creativity and what definitions of creativity might animate us in our planning and in our design of Jewish education. You're all coming to the end of what has been an epic year, to say the least. And in the moment, before you know it, you'll be planning for next year. And of course, as we begin planning, it's helpful to really think deeply about why we're doing it. What is it that we are aspiring to achieve in our Jewish educational work? And today I'm going to spend a little bit of time with you just going a bit deeper into what it might mean to really pursue creative thinking as the goal of Jewish education. So just to get us started, we're a small group, and I haven't met all of you, but if you could just take a moment and tell me your name. It's posted, obviously, but tell me your name and where you work and something creative you've done in the last week. So just take 20 seconds and think about what creative thing you want to tell us you've done. And we'll just do a quick go around. And I'll ask for a volunteer to go first. And then if you would call on a friend when you're finished. So
I'll go first.
Please.
So I'm Beth Penamacor. I'm at Temple Beit Hayam in Stuart, Florida, in my 25th year there. Cantorial soloist for 25 years and the director of ed for 12 years. I think the last creative thing that I did was our last day of Sunday school. It was on Shavuot, and I had all of the kids make their own sundaes. I made about 36 blintzes, and then all of the parents made their own blintz fillings, and then we cooked them. The kids did a few other things. We had all sorts of creative things for them to do for Shavuot, and yeah.
Thank you.
That's pretty much what I did. That was the last thing that I had done with the kids. And I made a kugel, and so that they could really see what Shavuot is all about, because we've never really gone as far as Shavuot for religious school. We usually stop at Mother's Day, but since the pandemic, we decided to go a little bit longer.
Thank you, Beth. Okay, good. So cooking, what else? Robin.
Our rabbi is retiring, and our synagogue has a thing about with wimples. And so each of the kids made a hand, and I made him a wimple with all of the kids' hands, and that felt creative.
Lovely, lovely. And feel free to say things that you're doing just in your own lives. It doesn't have to be something that you've done in your role.
I'll say something I did in my own life.
Great, Bailey, it's nice to see you. It's been a
good
while.
to see you too, Miriam. So a friend had a Shiva yesterday for her sister, like a really informal one. And I always am like so self-conscious about my ability to cook or bake or make anything look pretty. So I looked something up online and made these like crackers with cream cheese and hot pepper jelly, and looked up how to make them look pretty. And everybody was impressed. So I was impressed with myself.
Great, thank you, Bailey. Allison.
Hi, I'm Allison. I'm outside of Boston at Temple Shir Tikva, where I'm the director of education. My husband and I are designing our outdoor spaces. So we are deciding like where we're putting certain plants, and we're having patio built, and thinking about, different times of the day where light comes into different spaces. So that feels very creative in a different kind of a way than I am typically used to being creative.
Kayla, how about you?
Hi, I'm Kayla. I'm the director of congregational learning at Temple Aliyah in Needham. And Bailey, you and I have been like on the same wavelengths today. I also was thinking of a personal story that my grandmother died last month, and we're doing a like end of Shloshim service for her tonight. That's going to be a compilation of pictures and music. And we had my grandmother was very into musical theater, so she had a lot of musical theater friends that will be performing music tonight. And we've been working on slideshows, and it'll be a very multimedia presentation, which it's been a fun way of remembering her through making all of the different components to go into tonight.
Thank you, Kayla. Jamie, we haven't heard from you.
Okay, I'm Jamie. It's my first time here. I've been in rabbinical school for 6 years. Before that, I was a teacher at Temple Emmanuel in Newton, or a teed in Wayland, where I was also the ed director. And I'm actually going back to teaching in supplementary schools when I'm ordained, because I love it. It's so, but recently, all I can think of is finishing papers and projects, but the most creative thing I've done recently was put together a morning prayer service for the whole school, which reflected my style of tefillah and involved a lot of different kinds of prayers and poems and videos and music, and the involvement of a lot of classmates and teachers. And yeah, that's what I did.
Thank you, Jamie. Marion, do you want to share something creative you've done recently? just to round out our spectrum of creativity here?
Sure. Unfortunately, the thing that I made is actually sitting on my dining room table, but it was a collage from another seminar similar to today's seminar, where we looked at the pasuk, Rokaha Aretz al Hamayim, and how the earth and the water interlap, or which one covers the other, and using that as a metaphor for our own sense of where we are at this moment. And just sort of that pasuk has just lasted with me. And the reason I'm doing this is that my collage had like the tidal wave, but also like the solidity of the earth. So the Rokaha Aretz al Hamayim.
Beautiful. So I want us to just notice that even in these brief introductions, we have used a range of verbs, adjectives, metaphors, practices. Our creativity just in this small group spans worship, ritual, prayer, creating tefillah. I heard about gardening and holidays and poetry and art making. And I also heard problem solving. I heard you talking about an event or a milestone that needed to be addressed or celebrated or marked in a new way. And you figured out a new way to engage your community, your friends, your family, your partner, yourself, your own soul in that project. So let's use your own experience as the foundation for a definition of what we mean when we're talking about creative thinking as an aspiration in Jewish education. Now, often when people are making their plans for their Jewish educational environments, they think about what is it we want to teach, what's most essential, and then how can we come up with an engaging way to accomplish that. And instead, what I want to invite you to do is to think about what kinds of thinking do you want to engage your learners in? What kinds of thinking do we think of as distinctly Jewish? What are distinctly Jewish sensibilities that are foundational and essential for creative thinking? So often, creativity is a tool or a fad used for engaging students or making the learning interesting. And I want to argue today that actually the creative thinking is the process and the product. It is itself the project of Jewish life. And by designing learning that engages our students in creative thinking, we are inducting them into creating a Jewish civilization together. Now, my creative task is actually figuring out how to teach like 3 hours of content in 20 minutes, which I'm not going to actually do. But I will give you lots of sources that you'll be able to do some more diving into on your own. And we will we'll sort of dance at the tip of the iceberg and see where we land. So today is about embracing creative thinking. And we started by looking at what are the unique ways we are creative, both for our learners, but also in our own daily lives and our own approach to our own spirituality, ritual, etc. So now let's look at some sources and some definitions of creativity so that we can understand what it is that we're talking about. And I'm going to take you through an interdisciplinary set of sources on this topic. And then we'll talk a little bit about what I view as the content of Jewish creativity. I can see this group has a lot of the how. You've got the paper, you've got the poetry, you have the ritual, you have a lot of methods, right? But the question is, how do we actually work this idea of creative thinking into the whole curriculum so it's really like the gestalt of what we're doing? So let's start with Mordechai Kaplan. How do people associate creativity with the moment we're living in now? That it somehow has something to do with the future, innovation. But actually, Jewish creativity goes very far back, even before 100 years ago, but I'm going to start with 90 years ago. Mordechai Kaplan is famous for his idea of Judaism as a civilization, wrote in this very famous chapter on Jewish education in his book, Judaism as Civilization. To be trained as a Jew should mean to be given habits that would help one function creatively in all of life's situations. How are we getting our students ready to participate in this complicated world that we live in? Not in some future sense of how are they going to face the uncertain world, but how are they going to live in and reconstruct the world they live in now? I'm going to take you through some sources on creative thinking. I don't think we're going to have time to write ourselves into the source sheet as a group, but what I'd like to invite you to do as we go through these sources that I'm going to link to is take some notes for yourself. Do you have a notebook or a piece of paper or someplace where you like to take your notes? I'm going to run us through some highlights in this. This is a long source sheet, and I'm happy to give you the link in the chat if you want to go through this kind of at your own pace. I know some people like to follow along on screen on the screen share, and some people prefer to split their own screen and play with it and scroll through, so you have both options.
Miriam, before you go on, it looks like the sharing permissions were not 100% on the Google Doc.
Oh, you can't get into the Google Doc? Okay.
Yeah.
Give me 1 second, I will.
Thank you.
That. Click, click, click. I feel like Zoom should offer music for when the presenter is just clicking everywhere, for that little bit of wait time. Okay, try this link and see if it opens now. Does it open now? Great. Okay, perfect. And I'm gonna share as well so that you can follow along with where I am. So we're going to do a very sort of quick tour through these sources, and I invite you to do some reading on your own. You can of course save this link and go back and look at them later. But I want to start here with Kaplan. Creativity is the result of a whole-souled and organic reaction to life's values, of a reaction which senses, emotions, imagination, intelligence, and will are fully aroused. Note in this, just this quick 2 sentences, or 1 sentence if you want to argue that the semicolon makes it 1 sentence. Note the integration of the mind, of the senses, of the heart, right? The idea of a whole-souled reaction to our values. What would it look like when we teach midot, when we teach Jewish values, for our students to have a whole-souled reaction to their learning? It's just a thought question for you to take with you from this conversation. I'm going to raise a lot of questions. I don't believe in prescriptive professional learning where I simply tell you 3 tips you can go home and do. I want to invite you into a conversation that I hope we will be in for a long time, even though this is my first go around with you, but these kinds of conversations have to be iterative in order for them to be meaningful. So what Kaplan is asking of us here, of Jewish educators, because this is his chapter on Jewish education and his vision of Jewish education, is that we have to go beyond the knowledge acquisition approach of just passing on tradition passively from one generation to the next. But we have to arouse the senses and the emotions in learning. I imagine, since many of you have been involved in Jewish education programs, that there's a language of Jewish educational planning that often asks us to separate out into columns what we want learners to know, be able to do, believe. We create these taxonomies to help us organize all the things we want to accomplish. Kaplan, and you're going to see in some of the later sources, asks us to bring it all back together. I noticed, I think it was Allison's paper midrash had a sort of like a woven, it looked like a woven braid to me, almost like a challah or a bracelet, right? So I want you to think about this metaphor of weaving as we think about the whole soul. I'm going to move down now to the bottom of page 2, Abraham Joshua Heschel. Heschel writes, all creative thinking comes out of an encounter with the unknown. All creative thinking comes out of an encounter with the unknown. So much of Jewish education is about trying to present something that we know. What if Jewish education was about awakening us to wonder and be curious about all the things we don't know? What does it mean to prepare ourselves to hold all the things we don't know? Let's keep going. And here's a definition of creativity from Sir Ken Robinson. This is a graphic representation of Robinson's TED Talk, which is a summary of his book. And Robinson writes that creativity is the process of having original ideas that have value. Original ideas that have value. Think about your own creative acts of just this week that you shared at the opening, and all of those creative ideas that you brought into the world because they were needed, because a situation demanded them, right? There were applied imagination, putting new ideas into practice. Robinson says something that's a very important caveat, though, on this notion of original ideas. He says, being creative is not just about having off-the-wall ideas and letting your imagination run free. It may involve all of that, but it also involves refining, testing, and focusing what you're doing. The real driver of creativity is an appetite for discovery and a passion for the work itself. So Robinson's definition of creativity can be very useful for us in Jewish education, particularly when we want to engage our learners in creating new modes of ritual, new ways of thinking, new ways of praying, new ways of gathering, new ways of comforting others. We might borrow from existing recipes and use the existing liturgy and text, but we might also adapt it and change it and build something new. Okay, I'm going to go past the sacks because that's a whole long thing in and of itself. Let's go down to page 7. Mary Helen Imordino Yang. She is an affective neuroscience. She studies the intersection of emotions and the brain in learning. And she says that creativity is a means to survive and flourish in social and cultural context. Essentially, our brains need us to be creative. Our brains thrive on creative opportunities. And we see that in education when education is boring or doesn't challenge our students or doesn't ask them to step up and be part of the process. We flourish when we are creative. Next, Edward Clapp is a scholar of creativity right in your neck of the woods in Cambridge. And he provides what I think is a very important caveat when it comes to our definitions of creativity. If I were to ask you, who do you think are the most creative people who ever lived? I'll bet a good number of the names that first come to mind would be major composers or major artists, many of them men, many of them no longer alive. We have this myth of the lone genius as the holder of creativity. And Clapp's book, Participatory Creativity, invites us to think about creativity as a distributed process, one where learners can all play a role in contributing to building something, to making something new, to developing new ideas. Throughout the West, we have developed a fond affection for our heroes, our valedictorians, our Oscar-winning actors, our Olympic medalists. Let's pause for a moment. Think about how our education system really does promote this kind of competitive spirit, trying to be the best, trying to be the most creative in the room. But actually, creativity really thrives when we all participate. When people with different talents are part of the process. Think about this definition of creativity as participatory, as allowing new voices to enter our sphere and contribute to our community. So what does it look like when creativity is truly participatory, when there's a broader network of people and members engaged in our kahila? So
if I may, can I just
share right now and just, yes, Miriam.
I just wanted to echo that that was the intention, of course, of the Midrash that I started with, how both Haliav and Bezalel needed to be involved in the beautification and creation of the Mishkan and all of its vessels.
I have some.
Whoops,
Okay.
Michael is getting in the car, I think. Michael, okay, I'm muting him. Okay, so that's, Miriam, so thank you for pulling that together. And I also, I'm sorry to take up time and space, but I just need to also just share one of the first things I did this morning. I was able to pop into a student of mine's classroom to see her students present their end of year projects. And these were high school kids. They were all reflecting on how they worked as a team, because the final project was not an individual product.
Yeah.
Anyway, go ahead.
Absolutely.
I'm sorry.
And there's so much work that we need to do to kind of undo the grammar of schooling, where there's an expectation of someone's going to be at the head of the class, someone is going to be awarded, most creative, artist of the year, winner of this prize. And the other part of the grammar of schooling that we need to address if we want to adopt some of these definitions of creativity is that what Miriam was just saying, that creativity has to be participatory, that everyone has an important role to play in the group, that everybody counts. So here's a summary of some of the ideas. In one slide, a summary of those 10 pages. Creativity is a tool to build a Jewish civilization. How would Jewish education look different if what we were doing every Tuesday and every Sunday and every other day that students are connected to one another, even outside of our classes, but in their social media, in their online spaces, in their playgrounds? What would it mean to think about that work as actually building a Jewish civilization? What if we thought of creativity as a spiritual stance to embrace the unknown with curiosity instead of fear? What if it was our capacity to come up with and test new original ideas and solve problems? What if we prioritized our brains thriving and flourishing in this ever-changing world? What if we embraced a deliberative collective process that draws on our diverse and unique talents? And finally, and this is where I want to take you in just the few minutes that we have left, how might we think about a Jewish framework of habits of mind, soul, and heart that can enable us to adapt, transform, and build Jewish life and create the world we want to see? So I want to introduce you to a framework for Jewish education that I'm experimenting with, which I call Jewish Creative Sensibilities. The idea of Jewish sensibilities comes from Vanessa Oakes, who wrote a really sort of beautiful primer for how Jews sort of think about their Judaism and live Jewish lives and learn to think Jewishly in the world. And a lot of these actually apply to our creative thinking. These are Jewish values that we tend to I want to invite you to think about them as sensibilities of ways of being and seeing that we take into the world and can help us become creative thinkers, adapters of our tradition, creators of the next generation. So here's a list of them. We won't have time to go through all of them, but I want to take just one and take you through it so that you can start to imagine what it might look like to use Jewish sensibilities as a way to engender creativity in your learners. So let's just take and do a little bit of a deep dive into the sensibility of tshuva, This is a Jewish sensibility that you will no doubt be encountering as you head into the August season of your teaching and planning. So as we think about the Jewish sources to learn the sensibility of tshuva, you might use what are some of your favorite sources on the idea of tshuva? I'm gonna just stop share so we can see each other. The notion of repentance, returning, improving. What are some of your favorite sources? All right, maybe our heads aren't there yet, but
So
okay.
I'll say something because, and this is probably really out there, but I think some of my favorite sources are my own students. Because they, we always delve into, okay, Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, and we talk about Yom Kippur at the very beginning of the school year. And we always ask them, what are you most thankful for? What are you most sorry for? What do you regret? Just in the different age groups that they come up with like really, very thoughtful and very interesting answers. So, and then that makes us think. So I'd have to say my students.
Right. So I want to just share that there are a lot of ways that we might think about connecting our traditional sources of what we're supposed to do, right? We have these rituals of saying we're sorry, asking forgiveness, but it's also a pathway to making the world better, improving our relationships, improving ideas and make them better. Let's go back to Ken Robinson's notion of creativity as testing and refining ideas. The first time we come up with something, it might be half-baked. It might not be fully realized, but part of the tshuva process is actually going back and revising things we've already done, making sure that maybe when we put an idea or a word out there in the first place, it might have hurt someone's feelings and maybe it needs some revision and maybe we need to address that. So I want to suggest that even the idea of tshuva is iterating, reiterating, revising, making our previous work better, all in service of creating a new and better world, new and healthier relationships. And as we think about the year we've had, the notion of tshuva, what is it going to mean to go back? Are we really going back, or is what we're doing trying to learn from a set of experiences, many of which were unprecedented, and creating something new all together? Tshuva as the progression of creation. Precisely, maybe it's the next square, maybe it's day 8, right? How do we turn teshuva into a tool for creating the 8th day? To go back to that beautiful set of images that we began with. Robin, were you motioning to
I was just thinking about turn it for everything is in it also as a different take on tshuva.
Exactly. So we could spend a half hour just doing an associative exercise where we connected the dots to all of these different phrases and how they can connect back to living a sensibility of tshuva as a pathway to creating the next step in our progression of creation. I'll just share one last slide, given where we are in the time, which is, actually, I'll just do 2 quick slides. As you're thinking about next year, and as you're kind of contemplating over the summer, how might I bring a set of creative sensibilities to my teaching? Start with the end in mind. When you're wondering about what to teach, think about what authentically does your community need this year? And this is just a sample of ideas, but you can go back to your regular curriculum and whatever was on the page for 3rd grade or 5th grade or 7th grade, or you might think about wellness and mental health, or exploring ideas that are unsettled, or the need to do more outreach to neighbors. And then think about what are the ways that your students could be engaged in authentic projects that bridge their creative Jewish sensibilities into the world, that require them to live and apply Jewish language, Jewish stories, their Jewish experiences, to already participate in building a creative Jewish civilization. Because let's be honest, we are living in a world now that really demands that we adapt and create a new way of being in the world. We are coming off of such a challenging year, and we've learned so much. I think we've discovered so many things about ourselves that we can use as texts to add to our own sensibilities. So thank you for spending this time with me. And I hope we'll have an opportunity to learn together again sometime in the future.
Miriam, just thank you so much for lifting us all up this morning, really lifting us up and over our own narrow moments, our moments in Mitzrayim, to possibly conflate the imagery from Breshit. And thank you so much. Those,
Thank you.
So Raman and Bailey and Kayla and Allison, these are some of the things we can certainly continue to talk about on our Thursday groups. And Jamie, maybe you'll be joining us in the Thursday groups as you come back into the field outside of the Beit Midrash and back to the field. And I guess Beth had to pop off early. But so thank you so much, Miriam, really a pleasure. Of course, we look forward to so many more interactions and collaborations and co-learning and co-teaching together. So thank you for being with us.
Thank you.
I
Really-
so much appreciated your different sort of take and slant as we think about next year, as opposed to like, just what are you going to do differently, or what did we learn, but embracing sort of the creativity in ourselves and pulling it out for our students. So I wish we had more time.
Great. I know, I feel like, there's so much more we need to do, but
I actually think there was a Boston community of practice last year that might have read your article on creativity. Might
Yeah.
be, oh,
It was,
Allison.
we did. Yeah, we did.
Yeah. I wish we had more time too. This was great.
Well, we can certainly invite Miriam back. We will definitely do that. So I actually just also wanted to say a half a sentence about Lehitraot for this group. This is the end of these series. And again, as Bailey and Robin and Kayla and Allison know, we're working very hard to sort of reconfigure what the offerings will be next year. We'll be sort of putting something out to the public very shortly. So some version of these sessions will continue. And of course, our Thursday sessions will continue. So we have lots of venues to continue these conversations. But for this group, I want to wish really hatzlacha in wrapping up the year and just looking forward to a restorative summer and looking forward to what comes next, and being continually in collegial conversation and support of each other. And Jamie, again, Mazal Tov, I will see you at graduation. Just so exciting to have watched you come from your whole arc.
yeah.
It's just wonderful. So thanks, everybody. We'll see you soon. I will be posting this, the recording of this, so you can certainly share it with teachers. You can share it with other colleagues. And of course, you get those massive emails that I send announcing that those things have been posted. All right, everybody.
Thank you.
Have a great day, great week.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.